Two-time Fantasy Analyst of the Year, Jamey Eisenberg, with me to recap what we've seen so far in Week 6. Jamey, the 49ers not only lost their first game of the season, but also lost Christian McCaffrey in the second half to an oblique and rib injury. He came in for one play after being worked on the sidelines, and then he left the game for good. But should fantasy managers be worried when it comes to McCaffrey's availability in the near future?
Absolutely. You know, you never want to see a star player like this, especially what we've just gone through the last couple of weeks when guys like Justin Jefferson and James Conner and, the other injuries that we've been dealing with, Anthony Richardson, and even today, guys like Justin Fields and Deebo Samuel on his own team, leaving the game. But, when it comes to McCaffrey, we just hope that they were being cautious and they want to make sure that he's ready for the end of the season, because that's what the 49ers are looking at. They're not looking at a regular season win in October. They're trying to make sure Christian McCaffrey is healthy for a game in February if they're able to get there. So they're going to be cautious. They're going to certainly make sure that he is 100%. The good news is they have some extra time for Week 7 because it's a game against Minnesota on Monday night. But as long as he's healthy, you're playing him. And if he's not going to be out there, you're going to be running to the waiver wire to get probably Jordan Mason, because he's the healthier of the two of the backups right now. But Elijah Mitchell at least played in this game. So we could have a little bit of a frustrating situation trying to figure out who the best running back is in San Francisco. But whoever does start against Minnesota, whether it's McCaffrey, which would be the best case scenario, or one of these other guys, will probably be in a lot of starting lineups, because we know this system has been great. We saw Elijah Mitchell before McCaffrey got there, did a lot of fantastic things. So we just hope to get a little bit of clarity. But the best case scenario would be is that McCaffrey was just being pulled for precautionary reasons and that he's able to play in Week 7 and beyond.
Yeah, hoping to definitely see McCaffrey back on that offense. And Kyle Shanahan likes to run with the hot hand, so it could go any kind of way when it comes to next week against Minnesota. But from one running back to another, the Lions were already shorthanded with Jahmyr Gibbs out. And then David Montgomery left Sunday's game against the Bucs in the second quarter with a rib injury. But what do we make of what's going on in Motown?
So hopefully, if Montgomery can't go in Week 7, it's a tough game against Baltimore, that we do see Jahmyr Gibbs back out there. We already had one game sample size where Montgomery did not play in Week 3, and Gibbs was okay. He had 14 carries, 70 yards, did not really work in the passing game, which is kind of what you would have expected. But I think he'll get an opportunity to do everything that we've seen Montgomery do, just not to the same level. Now, if both guys can't go, which would be a disastrous situation, Craig Reynolds would step in, and he looked good today against Tampa Bay. Let's give him some credit. He ran well, certainly had a big block on Amon-Ra St. Brown's touchdown reception. But again, he is not going to play at the level of David Montgomery, probably not at the level of Jahmyr Gibbs. So we'd like to see at least one of those two guys out there. But again, tough matchup against Baltimore. So if Montgomery's back, he's healthy, good to go, you're starting him, no questions. Gibbs would probably be a starter if there's no Montgomery. If it is Craig Reynolds, again, another guy that'll be popular off the waiver wire this week, probably not a must-start guy, but certainly with 6 teams on a bye, I think a lot of people will be using him as a flex if, in fact, he is a starter for the Lions, because both other two guys can't go.
Good news, especially good intel, at least when you're looking at some of those players that are available on that waiver wire, because quite a few teams, as you mentioned, on that bye. But speaking of quite a few injuries for several signal callers on Sunday. We saw early exits from Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Trevor Lawrence. Well, what stands out, and what should we be concerned about, and what should fantasy managers do?
I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be okay. They do have a short week this week because they play the Saints on Thursday night, so that's one to just keep an eye on. Clearly, Lawrence hasn't lived up to the expectations as a fantasy quarterback. He's certainly been great as an NFL quarterback, but if he's out there, you're probably starting him even in a tough matchup against New Orleans. The most concerning one, though, is Justin Fields, because as Fox has reported, Jay Glazer, that it was a dislocated thumb. That does not sound very promising for him playing anytime soon, and we know the Bears are kind of in this limbo state of they want to develop and see what they have in Justin Fields, but also probably trying to make sure they get the highest draft pick they could potentially get, just in case they want to get another franchise quarterback. So I would imagine if Fields is anything less than 100%, they're not going to play him. It's an interesting game for them next week, so we'll see if Fields is able to play. If he is out there, you're clearly starting him because they'll trust his health and they'll be able to rely on him. But again, you got to make sure you have some other plans. So the first guy I would go look for, if any of these quarterbacks are available, Sam Howell, coming off a strong game against the Falcons, great matchup against the Giants. And so Sam Howell will be the first replacement quarterback I'll be looking for and recommending people to look for if you have to replace Justin Fields.
Good to know. Devon Achane going on IR last week. Raheem Mostert reminded us of why he's RB1 out there in Miami, putting up 132 yards from scrimmage and 3 total touchdowns. Is this production sustainable week in and week out for Mostert, especially considering who might be there taking reps alongside of him?
Well, we get a 3-week window still without Devon Achane. He's out for 4 games, so he missed this week's game. He's going to miss 3 more. Well, we have the, sort of the storyline we got to keep an eye on is Jeff Wilson going to be activated off of IR? Clearly, he's not going to supplant Raheem Mostert as the lead running back in Miami, but he will take some touches away. And so the high-end production that we saw from Mostert today probably won't be there if there is somebody of significance like a Jeff Wilson. But at this point, Raheem Mostert is locked in as the #1 running back for the Dolphins until Achane returns. And then who knows what happens at that point moving forward, how healthy Achane will be. But Mostert's just been an absolute stud so far this season. You mentioned RB1 in Miami. He's the RB1 for fantasy managers at this point, just the way that he's been producing. And now you got McCaffrey going down. Bijan Robinson's been struggling a little bit. Austin Eckler, we'll see what happens with him coming back from his injury on Monday night. But Mostert at 31 has just been an absolute star. Clearly, this Dolphins offense has been fantastic. And look, they've taken advantage of some good matchups. Denver in week 3, Carolina today. Big boy test next week against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night. But I think the way Mostert's running right now and the way the Dolphins offense is operating, he still has a chance to be a top 5 running back. So as long as Achane's out, Mostert's going to be an absolute stud.
And a big test, like you said, next week against the Eagles. Jamey, I appreciate the insight as always.
Thank you.
And if you want more from Jamey, you're going to want to check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast. Jamey is joined by Heath Cummings, Dave Richard, and Adam Azer throughout the year, giving you all the advice you need to win your league. And it's available wherever you get your podcasts.